Oh boy, I know I'm probably setting myself up to not make many friends with a title as baited and opinionated as the one I've chosen, but let me assure you this first and foremost. The game that I'm about to talk about today is most certainly not a bad one. In my last video, I gave an in-depth look at the not so well received last entry to the Jak and Daxter series with The Lost Frontier, which if you saw said video, top right corner, you'd know that as it turned out, to my surprise, it was not as awful as so many had made it out to be, with some interesting newly introduced mechanics along with a passable story, we'll say. Of course, despite it being my least desired game from the series for me to cross off, it wasn't the last on my list. Daxter, a spin-off focused solely on the series' wisecracking Otso of the same name, was released exclusively on the PSP in 2006, and unlike The Lost Frontier, received a much warmer reception from fans. As the first game to have been worked on by developer Ready at Dawn, the studio was given the task of taking the well-beloved gameplay of Jak and translating it down to his much smaller sidekick for an even smaller device the series had been used to by now. Despite my obsession over the Jak and Daxter series and my intrigue in their approach to building a whole game around one of my favourite sidekicks, I never took the plunge to purchase a PSP as I wasn't much of a handheld gamer back then and only had my hopes of it one day making its way to consoles. And indeed that day finally came last year, with a port of Daxter having been provided to both PS4 and PS5 consoles, marking what I can only assume to be the only pre-PS4 PlayStation franchise to be fully preserved on modern consoles without the need for streaming. Admittedly, these Jak and Daxter ports have come with their fair share of issues, especially when it comes to the PS4 versions to Jak 2 and 3, so it's a very glass half full kind of win here. With the exception of Daxter, up till now I've made videos detailing my thoughts on all games to have come out from this series I still adore, and well, it seems fitting to finish it all off in a nice bow, if indeed Jak and Daxter's futures are now relegated to just cameos in other games from now on. And no, PlayStation Move Heroes doesn't count, let me have my moment of zen. Daxter, the game, is a spin-off that also acts as a mid-call, kicking things off right as our two heroes arrive in Haven City during the opening to Jak 2, with Daxter escaping, all the while Jak is carted off to prison to be tortured for 2 years and start exercising those vocal muscles of his.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Shortly before the two's reunion, Daxter finds himself receiving a job offer from Osmo, owner of the city's last bug extermination business that has been hit hard by the increasing infestations of metalhead bug variants, and I guess because he saw Daxter running into a Crimson Guard years ago, he figured he'd be perfect for the job. I'm a little perplexed as to why it took Osmo roughly 2 years to get around to asking Daxter to join his failing business. Just seems like that 2-year time jump should have maybe been shortened down to say 2 days or 2 weeks perhaps, and then maybe we get some sort of time skip at some point during the game. Anyway, with Daxter's skills along with his new extermination gear provided, Osmo sends Daxter to a number of locations across Haven City and its outskirts in order to help out troubled citizens under threat from all kinds of insect adversaries. Along the way, Daxter receives aid from other supporting characters such as a woman named Taryn, along with Osmo's son, Simon. Oh yeah, and he also ends up getting a bug named Tick to follow him around at one point, and me just saying this sentence is about as long as how relevant he is to the game. To say the story is like this time is quite the understatement, as on most occasions our objective is just to defeat a set number of bugs, and when it's not, it's usually just to collect or destroy some other random object or foe. Now you may be asking, surely we have some other goal we're driving towards in this game, and while yes, our attention does eventually centre on rescuing Jak and, well, unintentionally thwarting the plans of the metalhead leader and his general Kaden, they get barely any focus. We get one little reminder that there's still a thing roughly midway through the game, and then we go back to ignoring them until the final level springs up. Don't get me wrong, defeating bugs is fun enough, but it doesn't evolve enough over the course of this under 6-hour game. There are technically supporting characters throughout the story, but unlike previous games in series where they come with a lot of personality, and usually find themselves working their way back into the game again at some point. Here we get one 15-second cutscene of them requesting aid, and then one of them letting us know when the job is done. I guess there is the occasional cameo character that pops in, but unfortunately they hardly stay around long enough for you to remember they were even there. Here's an idea. How about in order to successfully plan out a raid in the prison Jak is being held in, why not have Daxter start doing more dangerous jobs in order to acquire the assistance of some of the supporting cast? Or hey, maybe Daxter uncovers evidence of a plot by the metalheads to breach the shield walls from the inside. It just comes off as very, what's the word, by the way, do you think Jak really does become Mar, Haven City's founder in the past? I mean, sure, it could just be a coincidence they share the same name, but time travel is a thing in this universe. It would explain things like that big gun used to breach the Metalhead nests along with his knowledge of the precursors and the technology, but yeah, there is this questionable nature of Jak's lineage. I mean, he can't be his own descendant, he's not Fry from future... Unfocused, yeah, that's the word I was going for. I'm also very confused by the framing device used in this game, as we open on Samos looking over notes made on Jak and Daxter's adventures, leading into him talking about Daxter's solo adventure, only for the game to end with Daxter seemingly recounting the game's events to all his friends post-Jak 2. Did they just forget how their game opens, or is there some sort of Cloud Atlas story within a story thing going on here? Anyways, how's the game actually play then? Much of Daxter's gameplay is close enough to what we're used to with Jak, with plenty of platforming and combat throughout, but with Daxter sparing the guns and eco powers to instead come equipped with bug extermination related weaponry, along with being able to crawl through small spaces, climb various surfaces, and slide down rails. Melee damage is dealt out thanks to his newly acquired bug zapper, while his spray gun can be used to dispense green eco on foes, with you over time acquiring upgrades like being able to switch between fire and ultrasonic, along with allowing Daxter to hover for brief moments. The spray gun requires constant refills with clusters of green eco littered throughout, with them often used to help extend your hover boost for longer distances. It's not much, to be honest. I do think acquiring one or two more gadgets would have filled my appetite to see Daxter improve more as the game progresses. Melee combat could have also done with either a lock-on or dodge mechanic included in, as it can take a few hits to take down some of the more bulkier enemies. Really, in most circumstances, you're likely just to end up using the flamethrower to avoid the hassle. I also wish the game would have you retain at least a portion of spray left in the tank whenever it becomes fully depleted, as backtracking for eco clusters can be a tad annoying. Though you do occasionally get to drive a few vehicles in this game, it's nowhere near to the same extent as past games. For better or for worse, depending on the player, they do control fairly similar to most of the hovercraft from past games, only slightly more weighed down this time. There are a few bosses who are difficult enough, I guess, though that mostly comes from problems I've already mentioned. And let me say that if you were already not a fan of the Onin and Metalhead Mash minigame missions from Jak 2, well, chances are you're going to have more than a few upsetting moments spread throughout, with random symbol matching minigames dropped in on occasion that require you to beat them without any mistakes. Like the Lost Frontier, the rewind feature mitigates this pain by a lot, but it really shouldn't. If there is one standout positive I can take from this game, it's in how many of its levels do at least look nice. There's some good attention to detail and use of colours used to accentuate each location's place in the world, something that was sorely lacking in the Lost Frontier. A lot of what we see from Haven City's time involves locations we've never gotten to explore before, such as a ritzy hotel, these underground tram tunnels, a fishery housing a giant whale-sized fish that I was at first convinced was a glitch of some kind. Although there are some locations that leave a little to be desired, there are enough hazards and obstacles to better stand out, such as jumping between speeding trams, evading lurker sharks, hopping over security lasers, crawling past killer plants, and avoiding giant buzzsaws. Also, apparently Daxter can't swim, which is pretty odd considering he's literally half otter and half weasel. Due to our small stature, Haven City has also been reduced to just a fraction of both the industrial and port districts, with little to do in between the very linear missions. By taking naps back at the extermination shop, Daxter can partake in dream-based minigames, each of which parody well-known blockbusters like The Matrix and The Lord of the Rings. Back when this game came out and I saw these throughout the game's promotion, not only did I not mind that all of a sudden these outside properties were being referenced, but I actually kind of loved it, in fact. Mind you, this is also around the time when I spent a good chunk of my free time browsing sites like Newgrounds for Flash animation parodies and got excited to see films like Epic Movie in theaters, so I'm willing to admit that my younger self's taste probably still had some years to go before it could properly develop. I will say that many of them, especially the Matrix ones, are well animated. It's just a shame they all fall into some form of time-based button mashing, with there being very little to differentiate one from the other besides what they're parodying. Beating the first record to each one does, however, reward you with either a new tack or increasing your health bar, so there is something to be gained here at least. The game also allows you to find caged bugs scattered across the game, which you can then use to fight in the game's bug combat mode, which can be accessed from the main menu. Because this game originally came out on the PSP, of course it had to use some form of online included in with it, and in this case, what we basically got was bug cockfighting, but with more rock, paper, scissors and a small bit of RPG mechanics worked in. Token and bug juice vials can also be found hidden throughout the game and used to boost your attack and defenses after a turn, along with helping to juice up your bug stats. While this port naturally no longer includes online play, you can still play against AI opponents if you like. The music is very different to what we're used to. I mean, it's not as much of a deviation as Jak X was, where all of a sudden Queens of the Stone Age suddenly start to kick in, but it definitely tries to evoke a different kind of tone to the original trilogy. A lot of it really fits in with the enclosed spaces Daxter is scurrying around. I will say there are a few times when tracks won't kick in until you hit a certain part of the level, meaning you're left with nothing but dead air for a good few minutes. I was originally convinced that the hub world just didn't include a piece of music until looking up tracks for this video, I realised that it actually takes 25 seconds for it to start playing, but by that point you've likely already reached your destination considering how small the map is this time, so unless you're trying to pick up some more precursor orbs hidden throughout, it really doesn't have enough time to leave that much of an impact. Say what you will about how overused the tracks used in Jak 2 and 3 were for Haven City, they at least left the kind of impression the developers were trying to get across about the oppressive atmosphere created, whether it be from under the Baron's authoritarian regime or the war against the metalheads and KG armies. Max Casella is naturally given center stage as Daxter once again, and kills it as usual. I don't know if I was thrown off by the red top and blue jeans, but I was like 80% sure at first that Taryn was being played by Claudia Black, best known for playing Chloe Fraser, when in actuality she was played by Ashen's voice actor Susan Eisenberg. Speaking of returning voices, not only does Phil Lamarche show up once again this time as Caden, but this marks his 4th time as a series villain. Part of me hopes that if we ever do see a continuation of the franchise, they just automatically give him the villain role for old time's sake. So if my overall tone throughout this review, along with the more obvious video title, not being clear enough of an indicator, Daxter didn't really live up to the hype in my opinion. There is a case to be made that much of what is here would have been more than enough impressive to me had I been playing it on a PSP around the time of its release. Unfortunately though, there are a lot of examples I find of handheld games being ported to consoles that just don't manage to meet my expectations. Many did, and probably still do regard Daxter as a shining example that despite the PSP's flaws, it did come with some noteworthy titles. There are some well-detailed levels that are close to what we got on the PS2, and besides the rough cutscenes, look decent enough by today's standards. Platforming and combat are fine, they just could have used a little bit more time in the oven is all. Outside of us getting a few cameos of past and future supporting characters, there is unfortunately little intrigue as to how events and characters come to be before Jak and Daxter's reunion. And while the minigames will likely give you a brief chuckle, the gameplay to them outstays their welcome. I certainly don't have any regrets playing this game. It is a nice feeling to know that I've gotten to play every one of them now, and this game was a fun time. But as hard as it might be for some of you to hear this, as it stands, there was just a smidge more for me to appreciate in The Lost Frontier. But like I said at the end of that game review, I've seen opinions ranging from all over the place when it comes to this series. What's the best? What's the worst? What mechanics should stay and what should have never been introduced to begin with? The series certainly prided itself on its variety and experimentation at the time, and I certainly can't imagine what a continuation in today's day and age would look like, whether it be under the direction of Naughty Dog or some other much less busier studio Sony decided to hire. Overall, this series has been one hell of a trip over the course of my life, and even today I still find new things to appreciate in them every time I return to them, even the ones that maybe I don't even hold in higher regard as yourself. The series may be gone, but it will forever stay close to my heart. But hey, if you have any shocking opinions that you'd like to share with the class, why not go ahead and put them in the comment section. Trust me when I say I love to read through them all the time. Hope you're all doing well, and as always, till next time.